Today, we're going to explore what are those possibilities in the field of mental health, what's already been done, and what's still to work on, and also are those specific challenges when we talk about AI and health. Before we dive into it, I want to briefly introduce our speakers. She was all about machine learning and computer science in Wrocław University of Science and Technology, where she studied, and then she asked herself, how about humans? That's when she decided to study high-tech human touch at the University of Twente in the Netherlands. Since then, she manages to mix approaches, create a holistic approach, and make research at the intersection of information systems, physical health, mental health, and environment. She did a PhD in information system at the University of Geneva, where she's now professor of information science, and where she founded and directed the Quality of Life Technologies Lab, which leverages digital behavioral markers to sorry, I was a bit scared, to quantify and improve individuals' quality of life in new ways. Good evening and welcome, Katarzyna Wach.
Thank you.
He's a psychologist and has been working for 6 years now in the 147 team managed by Pro Juventute. 147, I don't know, in French it's 147, but I don't know, 147, like 911, I want to say 147, but is it okay? Is it okay? Right, fine. 147 is a phone number young people can call when they don't feel good or need help in any ways. They can call, WhatsApp, or email anytime, 24/7. On the other end, our guest is a nerd, as he calls himself, since he was a little child. Programming, developing have always been hobbies, and AI or neurological networks are part of his interests. He's currently working on AI solutions that could be implemented in the 147. Good evening and welcome, David Welten.
Bonjour.
And our third guest, our surprise guest, she's filling in for Martin Schrimp, who is unfortunately sick today, but we are very happy that she could join us after a bachelor in biology and a master in systemic neuroscience in the Graduate School of Systemic Neurosciences in Munich. She founded the mental platform Devi here at EPFL. Good evening and welcome, Marilatawi Igusti Bagos. You can take the mics. You're going to share two of them, if that's okay for you. I think they're on. Yes. Perfect. I'm going to sit down with you now. Yep. So, David, as we said, you're currently working on an AI project for 147. In which ways AI can help you and your colleagues?
Okay, I think it's more multiple projects. We try to, like in constellations, we try to do it step by step. So this means we will start slowly and try to then extend our projects. So what we start now is to, we have, well, like you mentioned, we have these WhatsApp conversations. So people write us using WhatsApp, and these conversations can be very long. And this is why we need a way to have an overview much faster, and it should help us to summarize these conversations, but also extract data like statistical data, because we always need to report statistics, and to help us to have an overview of what kind of person, what kind of solutions could be possible, and could also maybe suggest new solutions. Yeah, that's one side. And then we also have our website. We have many articles, information on different subjects. And instead of just have a Google-like search, but Google changed their search, so maybe they will change it. It will be in this direction. So people can ask natural language questions to the website, and the website will try to answer to the question and not just show an article. Then there's also the possibility of phone calls, but that's a difficult subject because there are restrictions, because it's an emergency number and you need to record them, but you can only use them for legal cases. So you're not allowed to use them for any data collection and train a language model or extract data or something like this.
That's a specificity for your domain. Yes. Katarzyna, in your researches, how has AI been able to help patients better their health and their mental health?
Thank you very much for this question. I would like to emphasize importance of language. And then in my domain, I shift towards the body. And what is always speaking silently is the body. And we are looking at the biophysiology and functioning, so physical health, psychological health, social interactions, and environmental aspects, so the context in which we are, and how can we quantify it with minimal obtrusive ways, like using wearables, smartphone, or home-based sensors, or some sensors around the body. So actually, when we look at AI from use of my perspective versus our colleague, is not analyzing the text or the input, the language input, but as I said, we're trying to analyze the behaviors. Many of you most likely have some wearable on you, 1 or 2. I have some 2, and each of the speakers have some, and we discuss our experience with these devices, right? Our smartphone is a device, so even if you don't have any, you do have something on you which is collecting some data, and we're trying to make the best out of this for physical health, psychological health, social interactions, and environmental aspects. And I would like to say that the most advantage right now we can see it in assessing where we are, like before we get into intervention, and like what's wrong with us, and because there's nothing wrong with us. Everybody is on some path of continuum of understanding their own body and their physical health, psychological health, and the aspect of assessment, where we are in this continuum and how can we improve. Of course, I'm also talking and researching in clinical populations where there's specific interventions which are designed by the experts. I'm a computer scientist. I am enabling this assessment and as accurate as possible assessment of where we are from perspective of sleep, physical activity, stress, social interactions, and then what can be improved. Thank you.
So, and understanding how we are, how our health is, our mental health is also something you're working on. Can you maybe explain us how this Devi platform works?
Yes, sure. I want to emphasize that Devi is still in the development phase. It's still not a fully functional product. The aim of Devi and the vision of Devi was always to shift the like mental health or like well-being treatment a bit away from psychotherapists, because there's a huge scarcity in like Germany as well in Switzerland. And the idea was to like empower people to take the actions on themselves and help themselves when they're facing challenges, minor challenges in their lives. And so I started with Devi actually with things like predicting anxiety attacks, looking into wearable data as my colleague, looking into the power of this. Then we shifted to emotion recognition, looking into wearable and physical data to recognize different emotion, clustering this, having interactions with an app with the user. And at the moment, shifting a lot, you will see. And that's why I'm emphasizing it's still in the development phase. At the moment, what we're doing is it's a combination of, let's say, well-being coaching combined with AI. So it's on the one hand side, there's still a coach, a person who is interacting with the people, but then also we have a digital platform where people do user-tailored exercises as well as have interactions in the moments where they need this. So we call it like the emergency interaction. It's not an emergency in the sense of it's about life or death. It's like easy things like, oh, I just had a fight with my best friend. I feel very down, like this is overwhelming. I can't handle those emotions. And then it's just about like helping them in a very cognitive behavior therapy approach of grounding them back in reality. So it's about like helping them to discover their own dysfunctional thoughts, their own dysfunctional patterns that they have in the conversation with us or with our AI, and help them by that, like to shift from those dysfunctional thoughts and behaviors into more functional ones, and like getting to know, oh, how can I differently see a challenge? For example, I can reframe this, right? I can see a challenge as something which is like too much for me, too overwhelming for me, but I can also see it as a point of growth for me, in the sense of like saying like, oh yeah, I feel very overwhelmed at the moment, but if I overcome this challenge at the moment, next time I face a very similar challenge, I can handle this because I'm growing now in this moment.
So you need to be able to predict this kind of thing. How did you work on this prediction with AI?
You mean when Dewey was still predicting anxiety attacks?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
And what we've used then for the model is we used wearable data. So it was mostly depending on heart rate variability as well as respiration speed. So how fast am I breathing? Also, like how long is my exhalation in comparison to my inhalation? Those things. We noticed then, unfortunately, that one of the most, like the strongest indicator for an anxiety attack, or like the likelihood for that, is actually carbon dioxide, the carbon dioxide level in the blood, which unfortunately is not not tracked on any wearable data so far, which would be very nice. So it works like in laboratory settings where people like have to blow into like a carbon dioxide meter to measure this. And with that, it was shown like in previous studies as well, that it was like able within a window of like 1 hour to predict anxiety attacks. But also we looked on the user side. So the idea of Dewey is like trying to combine like science, but then with an applicable, like actionable integration into daily life. So we also explored the whole like user side of like, okay, people with anxiety, is this actually creating any value? I mean, it's cool if I'm able to predict anxiety attacks, but is this actually necessary? And there are also, we in our conversations with people with anxiety, we noticed that people mostly know when they get anxiety attacks. They're quite aware of this. And it's not about like notifying them and be like, hey, I think you get an anxiety attack. It's more about like helping them to ground in this moment of an anxiety attack to come down. So what I'm doing at the moment, what we do with Dewey, as I said, our product is not fully fledged. We don't have any integration of wearable data. I would love that to have. But what we do is we also educate people on like what kind of physiological data can you look into. And for example, what I say to people with anxiety, when I say like, oh, when you have the feeling of like, I'm losing a bit touch with reality, I feel a bit itchy, and take your wearable data out, like take your Apple Watch or whatever you have, look at your heart rate. And then what we do is like a size breathing. I show them how to like try to calm down their nervous system by activating the parasympathetic nervous system and shutting down the sympathetic nervous system just by a specific like breathing technique. And I say to them, like, look at your watch, do this breathing, and you don't need to do it more than 5 minutes because you will already notice that your heart rate goes down actually. And it's nice to have this like visual feedback for them to like see on their watch, like, okay, my heart rate is quite high. Yes, I'm very anxious. And then they start like breathing and they see like, okay, it's coming down. Okay, it's coming down. Okay, yeah, I'm coming down. Okay. And then normally it's gone, and it seemed to help. So I see more the application in those directions.
Yeah, I have a question. Is the emergency chat you have, is it like a guidance for this breathing exercise, or what will it do?
No, this is like mostly like focusing on the dysfunctional thoughts. It's more asking you questions about like, oh, what are your thoughts at the moment? What are the emotions that you're currently like facing?
And still for help to ground the people.
Yes, exactly, to ground them in reality. Yeah.
I like that David is asking the question. I think I can go. No, it's perfect. I love that. That's exactly what we're here to do. So it's a call. If anyone wants here to build a device that can measure dioxin, carbon, that can be very helpful, it's duly noted. Would that be solutions that would interest you? Like, I mean, to help young people use wearables like an Apple Watch that they maybe have, and to use it just to better their mental health, or to just calm down in a bad moment?
Of course, it will be helpful, but for us, not really, because when they call us, I don't have access to their wearables, but we try to do exercises too. They call us in their emergency situations, when they have a panic attack, and then we try to ground them with different exercise. It can be breathing or just tell me all the things that are blue in this room. Each chair here. No, it's just exercise like this. It's very helpful. So it's nice to hear that there are ideas to do this with machines.
And is that something that a chatbot could do on your website, for example?
Yeah, of course it could be, but is it our? The question is it our task to do this? Because we have our task, or the number 147 is here to call someone in an emergency situations. And if we have a chatbot on our website, I think maybe in the future someday it will be okay, but for now, to differentiate when will I be talking to a chatbot and when to a human being, and at the moment I don't think the technology is that far to be enough responsible and to rely on it.
As you said, Katarzyna, you worked also on prediction, analyzing, for example, people's sleep patterns. How is that useful to better our mental health?
Well, thank you. Absolutely essential sleep-wake cycles in certain populations. And you can most likely comment on this. We're looking into understanding the hormonal balance and imbalance, which is created by lack of this specific patterns, and really overriding some specific needs of the body for sleep or activity or nutritious food and stress management and relaxation, right? So when we look into modeling the patterns of sleep-wake cycles, and when we look at how can we help the persons understand where they stand, that's where I again say come back to assessment and monitoring, like where you are and how do we bring them to a better and more helpful or more healthy sleep patterns, which then will balance their hormonal their hormonal state of their body. So that was interesting, and I will also comment from a perspective of a feedback, and the feedback which was provided either by clinicians in different projects I was working in, or either by a machine, like the biofeedback. And I have to say that working with older persons, it was very evident they don't want to talk to machine, and they would rather trust the individual, even if it's somehow guided. So we're looking into ways of integrating AI into this clinical care, and like in between the visits also, and the tools in between the visits also already. And that's where maybe about DIGA and digital health revolution in Germany, where apps are reimbursed and can be prescribed. Out of 200 or even 300,000 of different health apps right now on the market, there are 62. Do you know it? I checked it. I evaluated all of them. Many of them are related to cognitive behavior therapy and aspects of supporting the individuals in between the visits. Again, I'm looking at you because most likely you investigate this market and this solution. So 62 apps. There is a database, DIGA, you can find it online, which could be prescribed and reimbursed in Germany. And many of them are looking for ways of behavior change. And there are some very limited ones, maybe 2 or 3, which also have integrated wearables. And then it's really this clinical support, holistic point of view as well. There is physical health, psychological health, social interactions. There may be some elements, environment, which is very important for sleep. There will be sleep hygiene. There'll be questions about light and air quality and everything else. So I'm looking forward to, like, we are on the way. We have a long way, but we are further away than when I started to work in this domain 10 years ago, where it was absolutely impossible to think about this. The wearable like Oura Ring having all this different vital signs, continuous heart rate, and then so there's sleep awake cycles, and then there's respiration rate at night, and continuous heart rate variability, and then there's body temperature. And in the past we had cables. If you look at my talks, I have some talks and photos, and we had cables, tons of cables on the body, and it was like medical device, and it was impossible. So we are getting there. Thank you.
And now it's just this ring.
That is correct.
Oh wow.
Even more. Right, and it's not me. I'm not selling anything. I always we're not selling anything here. It's a Oura ring. It's a no, seriously. I'm integrating whatever is on the market in one of their studies. When you find, and if you're interested, I can send it to you. We investigated in my lab 438 different devices. 438. 2018. 12 of them could be on your feet. I wonder if you can walk, but that's another thing. And then many of them, they look in, like it's accelerometer based, so it's physical activity and sleep, and physical activity and sleep. And to some extent, some of them, they already had integrated some other channels, you know, some other, and some of them, they could be put anywhere on the body, and some of them, they needed to be put on specific parts of the body. And many of them like around the hips. And I don't know how many of you remember the early Fitbit, the first Fitbit like clips, you know, there were clips, and then there was a wearable, and then, you know, all of this. So I've seen all of this going. And unfortunately, 2 years later, 2020, I did reread it in the lab, the whole literature search and database search, and half of these devices were not existing. How many of you remember Jawbone app? Anybody? Like it was like a device. It was really really sleek and very nice and different colors, and people, wow, and it died. It just died. So also that's why, as a computer scientist and electrical engineer trained in Polytechnic in Poland, there was a moment I needed to decide of not making yet another device, not going to hardware part, although I'm considering it actually right now, not going to hardware part, but trying to integrate the best possible solutions which are there and which are validated to best. The companies are doing their best. They validate to best through their abilities as close as possible, coming to clinically validated algorithm. So not all the channels from these devices are validated, and then also they try to get as close as possible to this medical device without getting certification, because there's also liability aspects, right? So observing this, it's fascinating. We're just starting, I think.
I like your enthusiasm. That's very nice to see. And I think one thing very interesting in what you said is that, like, some old people, for example, are in difficulty when they need to use wearable, for example. And Marlia, what did you see, like, when testing all the devices? Did you see if that's something for everybody, or is it something that we can use for a certain type of patient that need to better their mental health?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how DEWE is at the moment, it's emphasizing especially on younger people, and it's emphasizing not on severe cases. So I think what David is very focused on with the emergency hotline, for example, is like really cases where people maybe have suicidal thoughts or are having deep depression and really feeling like it's maybe the end of their life, and they don't know where to go. So DEWE, of course, cannot take care of this. Like, I think this is like still, like, as you said before, like having chatbots for those things, I feel like it's ethically a big question, and also is with hallucinations and like how reliable are the answers that you get from this. So I want to emphasize DEWE is not for that. DEWE is more for people who are just like challenged in life. So we have, I have one target group, which are like women in their 40s, 50s. They have like now children a bit older, and they just like, they starting to notice that they're missing something. They were like taking care for such a long time for their children. And by that, they were like not sacrificing themselves, but not looking after themselves. Like their needs were always like put behind, and they can get to a moment where they noticing like, oh, I'm not resilient anymore. Like I start screaming very like fast, like my child does something and I just get from 0 to 100 like super fast, and I don't know where that's coming from. I don't want to be like my mom, or sometimes it's coming from those things. And they're reaching out and they're like, oh, I want to go on this self journey. I want to understand what is my patterns? Like, how do I behave? What I'm my thoughts that are behind this. And then we have younger people. I call it like the quarter life crisis. Yeah, it's quite common. You would be surprised. I mean, this life we have so much opportunities as educated and young people. And sometimes this can be very overwhelming. Even if we didn't grow up in any scarcity, like having this abundance of opportunities is very overwhelming. Those groups are faced with uncertainty of the future. They don't know what to do in the future. Also, a lot is depending on like recognition and praise from outside. So, I mean, chasing likes on Instagram or Facebook, all those kind of things are really supporting building a false self, right? To build an image of myself. And when I have this image of myself, like this ideal that I would love to be, like currently, like constantly in my mind, I'm comparing the reality to that. Like this is causing a lot of stress. Like they noticing like I can't meet the ideal, like I shouldn't feel like this, I shouldn't do this, my friends should be like, and my life look like this. And it's quite, and people get then very frustrated, very stressed, and they're coming, so they're saying like, oh, I feel disconnected, I feel overwhelmed, I'm very stressed, like I have everything, like I'm not suffering because I don't have enough to eat or I don't have opportunities, I'm financially safe, but something is missing in my life, that I'm feeling sadness or I feel anxieties and I don't know where it's coming from. And they want to go on this journey as well, like getting to know where is this from? Like what is causing this? And so with them, for example, we go a lot on those journeys of like, oh, what is like your self-worth? Like, is it innate or is it coming from external? Like going into deeper questions where they do exercises, do a lot of meditations, a lot of reflections, and trying to find those things. And maybe to end this monologue, we also noticed, and I talked a lot in November on a psychology conference in Germany about this with a lot of like psychiatrists and psychologists. It's people are not ready yet to just like talk with a chatbot like 100% and then don't rely on anything else. Like we're not there yet. Maybe we are there in the future, but it seems that solutions which are combining, so more called like blended care, combining like in person with like digital solutions, and those digital solutions can be like the DIGA apps where you can do like exercises and you can read, but this can also be chatbots, which are then extending the service that my therapy, for example, gives me, right? A therapist or a coach or whatever is only available at a certain time, but maybe in the middle of the night, I all of a sudden had a dream and I'm panicking and I would like to like just like ground myself in reality again and would like to reach out. And I see there like the opportunity or the possibility to have AI there and interact and help there. But still we have to find the right communication channels. We have to find the right ways how this can look like and how this is beneficial and supportive.
Lots of my colleagues use actually, a meditation app, for example. That's quite common now, I think. And we understand that like chatbot cannot be your answer for now and not an answer also ethically. So how will you use AI to analyze your conversation? How can that help you and your colleagues on the daily basis?
Yeah, that idea is, I think the blended idea is, that's the idea to have our consultants be supported by AI. But the thing is, we have emergencies, we have suicidal people, and in these cases, someone needs to be responsible, and it's about children and juveniles in our case. So we cannot give this to an AI. So this is why we try to support the consultants by help them to have a quick overview on the conversation to see if there's an escalation in a conversation. So maybe to predict, okay, this could become an emergency. So there's the idea to try to at least say, okay, this is an urgent one, because sometimes we have like 30, 40 open conversations to answer. And then we need to prioritize, and maybe it could help us. But that's the point where it starts to get difficult, because if you rely on an AI to say that's a priority one and that's less important, then it's very difficult, because AI is always, at least the large language models are about probability, and there's this small probability that it will be wrong, and we can't rely on this because we're responsible for these people reaching out to us. So that's very difficult, but as a help for us to be faster, to have this faster overview, to have more ideas. And on a long conversation, it's like we have conversations, if you use tokens, it's like more than 100,000 tokens. Most models have problems to use to directly do a summary on conversations as long as this. So that's even we as human, we have problems to extract all the important data. If we read this conversation, it's difficult to remember all the important things, to extract every data, and maybe it could help. We are not perfect, the AI is not perfect, but maybe it could help to at least be a bit better, to see some things we would oversee otherwise. So yeah, maybe this, so it's like it could help a little bit.
Katarzyna, you said before that in Germany, for example, they already like reimburse some of those AI solutions.
Not that advanced, huh? They are not that advanced yet.
But do you think like some institutions, for example, I don't know, Pro Juventute, are they ready to like implement such solutions? I mean, are they, when you work with institutions, do you think they're into it?
I can tell you it's a matter, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's a matter of reliability as well, right? So here we have an emergency. And I working at the beginning, it was telehealth and mHealth and eHealth and all the eHealth and digital health. And I can see that emergency cases are good for public relations of technologies. I've been working with mobile network operators who, like when they were Vodafone setting up a 3G network in the Netherlands, and in using case of mHealth, a continuous monitoring of electrocardiogram from the road somewhere in the village as a use case for killer for the mobile network, right? And it's from technical perspective, we can imagine, and we can. I also heard from a clinician, we are computer scientists, we just play with your toys. And that sometimes it's very correct, unfortunately, we just play with our toys. And you have to be careful with respect to understanding in which domain it's that applied is not the toy, but like the machine learning, the AI, the model, which is the black box, is applied. And what are the real implications? I think what I try to say is really that some organizations are not ready. It's just because there is so much at stake. And I can now give another example of us using hallucinations of large language models. When we try to model all this heart rate and sleep and physical activity data, if we feed it with a lot of representative samples of how somebody is moving around and living their life as nothing happens because the data has been collected, and from time to time a labeling. So from time to time we have so-called ecological momentum assessment, and the phone will ask, how do you feel right now? And there will be some label, right? So the model will learn more, like, I'm stressed right now, I'm this, I'm lonely, and then we use hallucinations as a way of producing the future possible behavior change scenarios, which will result in different outcomes. So we're working with healthy individuals or aging populations where it's not about emergency, and then we're looking into, like, if you continue like this, the model will predict of specific probability, looking at incorporating the medical models. It's not our models. Medical models, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. There are so-called calculators, medical calculators of specific events in these domains. And so it's more physical. I'm looking like it's more physical. Is there a model like this? I'm looking at it exists for or maybe depression or anxiety. I don't know. You put all these different parameters, and then you have a probability of event in some time in the future. I don't think so. Am I missing something? Yeah, exactly. So cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease like asthma and other respiratory diseases, we have so-called calculators, medical calculators. You can plug it in. Says, if you continue like this, if you feed all the inputs, including the blood tests, right, cholesterol and other and weight and age and non-modifiable factor, race and more aspects of genetics, and then in 10 years you have probability of expression of this disease, and then we're looking, okay, so we are trying to simulate, okay, if you just move a bit more, if you just sleep better, and then we simulate the effects, the medical effects on the future, right? So if you change it just a little bit right now, in the future there'll be huge effect. And seriously, some people don't care. I have to say, working with so many patients, around 20% of individuals will definitely say, I heard it saying, I'm not mixing my phone with my health. Like, don't even talk to me about your devices and your data and everything. Another 20% of population will be somehow open but need medication. So we're talking about digital literacy and also education and more support. And then that was research at Stanford. So really, also Silicon Valley theme and culture, right? And 60% of the individuals, I talked to 200 chronically ill patients, were open for these solutions. And then the main issue was like, how does this device also judge me? So there was also an element like, how is this designed? So it's not designed for older persons with challenges. It's designed for athletes and people who want to compete, because there's all this gamification and it's sharing the data by default. And then the statement from one chronically ill patient was, I have enough people judging me online. See the point? I have enough people judging me online. So I don't want to be judged offline, meaning through my device, because I'm not doing, because it shares with everything with my network, and now everybody sees that I'm not doing this or that. So it's the stigma part, the self-efficacy part, which is also we documented in our papers, where people are from the perspective of the belief of how much in control they are for the change. And then how can we use this AI, this whatever the black box is, and sometimes it's not that complicated, sometimes it's just basic regression, but how can he feed it back and says where you are and what we would suggest. And again, it's not me, I'm a computer scientist, I'm instrumenting it, but there's experts always in our team, and it's like this little thing, you know, us 1% here, you're on this level, 1% here, and then what do we simulate? How would that be the simulation of the future? How your future would look like? So that's how we are approaching it. And there's so many complex factors. And but you know, as I said, I'm very optimistic towards the future. So we have this digital literacy on one hand, and aspects of also sometimes presenting some information which people just believe. So we need to be very responsible from perspective of the quality of the information, and the legislation is there to help, but sometimes also to, yeah, we can talk. I think it's another question. Thank you.
No, but you use a term, very interesting words like feeding inputs, and I think allows me to speak about the data and the safety of stocking them, and how are you dealing with this issue on Devi platform?
Yes, yeah, it's a very good question. Data privacy, especially in those cases, is very difficult. As I said, Devi is not a fully functional product. I think I said it so many times now. But yeah, so we're still like in a testing phase, and we're communicating very honestly with the people that we're working together with, what we're using, like how their things that they write to us is feeded into models, and have their time to think about this if they want this or not. So yeah, it's something that we constantly are like in touch with lawyers as well, like trying to see. And also there's coming up right in the EU like a change for the exactly the AI Data Act. So yeah, I think it's a constant challenge. I don't have an answer to this, to be honest. And let's see what the future is bringing.
Yeah, they're so, I mean, like data is on our mental health are so intimate. I think that's something really personal, and maybe that's something really challenging. Is that something you're also working on? Is it a big challenge for you?
It's a very big challenge, yes, because it's very private information. We want them to trust us, and they're using WhatsApp to contact us. So that's also already the first problem when they use WhatsApp in their private life, and then they use it to talk with us about their mental health and their struggles. So it's not only about AI. It will be interesting to train a model with anonymized data, and I think it will be possible to you need to have this quality control if you train a model. So in this, then in this moment you can anonymize data. I don't think that's the problem. The problem is to have services that you can trust for all the consultations, if email and a service to chat using WhatsApp. And that's a big challenge. It's not, we try to be transparent. We have, yeah, you need to be transparent. You have this accept button on every website. So we try to be transparent, but you have to use services. And for AI, for us as an NGO, what possibilities do we have? We don't have our own servers. We can run with GPU power to compute everything. So we need to use a service. At the moment, Microsoft has service in Switzerland at least, and they even banks are using those services. So that's maybe okay. But I personally, I hope like providers like Swisscom, they try to build a computing cloud. So maybe there will be more, and so we have real Swiss service under Swiss law. I think that will be very important if we really want to feed them. The other possibility would be that we have advanced chips, and so we can already compute locally.
I wish you good luck with that, but it's a beautiful vision. Yes, I wanted to also comment from research perspective. We're collecting data from wearables and phones and self-reports. And also in some protocols, we had proxies. So people around the individual, so either healthy or patients, because patient populations. So we had a caregivers, or we had family members, and we had even for stress assessment some years back, we had students were participants, or actually I have a living lab. I promised myself, and also seeing how much is being done with students, for students, by students, all the models trained on students who get credits or not. Maybe it's biased or not. Maybe it's my perception from the past that everything is done with students, you know, first year students, because there are so many of them and you can just run some tests on them. And it's a part, okay, maybe I'm totally biased for sure. So in computer science, we don't do that. And also because I really want to collect data from daily life, then also some years back, after I set up a lab, I said, I need a living lab. I need at least infrastructure for helping me to recruit people who could not care less about my science. You know, like people who collect the real data, they live real life. They will collect bad data. Like there'll be missing data. There will be weird data, and there will be a lot of qualitative research necessary to understand and talk to them about why we see the spikes, or you know, why didn't you wear the device? And the person would say, because I have Rolex. What do you think who you are? And it happened to me. So when I'm getting back to the living lab and the collection of the data from daily life, and getting all this individuals, and then quality of life is this longitudinal outcome. It's not like from one day to the other. So in order to have this properly assessed, we been evaluated by the state of Geneva for personal data and sensitive data assessment, collection and processing. And we need to write many pages of what we're going to do with it. And then there was also software audit, right? So we have our own servers. So I want to say we have our own servers somewhere in University of Geneva data center, and then we manage it, and we have some help, of course, because you know, we're not like really like the framing is there. Sorry, I should not say anything because it's security issue, right? So but we have our own servers and they were edited, and the software I have developed myself for my postdoc, and now my students are maintaining and everything. So it took a year. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It took a year to be assessed. It took a year to be certified. And right now, when I have any new protocol for healthy individuals or patients, also there was part of the server is virtual. So it's like at Stanford, the part of the server was at the Stanford Medical Center. So the part of the server, not that the Stanford patients' data came to Geneva. No. The fact that we collaborate has nothing to do. In Denmark, the server is in Denmark. Part of the server was replicated. So I'm really happy to work with very skillful students who can do that and have a really good infrastructure. But it's really a day by day, night by night thinking about also security improvements. Sometimes pausing the whole study and losing data just because we need to really shake something up and really start from asking for help professionals, right? And that's very important for anybody who collects any data from any wearables and smartphones. I can see it. Please go through ethics committee and proper approvals before you talk to individuals. Thank you.
I'm gonna have one last question, then I'm gonna take yours. It was very interesting when you said like some people felt like judged by the AI or by the wearables or things like that, and I was wondering if it made me think about bias. I mean, your coach, for example, that you're developing. Is that an issue that this coach is kind of make people feel judged, or how can you be sure that you won't have any bias that will make people feel uncomfortable?
Yeah. So bias is a huge question. I mean, it's also, whenever I'm talking to another person, it's always the question of what is the bias of this person as well, right? So psychiatrists and psychologists are not free of a bias neither. And so models, when they're built, unfortunately, neither. So yeah, we have so far no active like protocol how to make sure that our interactions are not biased, to be honest. So far, the interactions that we have with the people that we're testing with, it seems to be a good interaction because it's not about anything about judging. So you don't get any feedback of, oh, this is good or this is bad. You only get questions. So for example, the example that I had, someone reaching out and saying like, oh, just had a fight with my best friend. I feel overwhelmed by emotions. It's just asking you like, oh, what is it exactly that you're thinking and what you're feeling? And then you're explain this, and then they're going deeper into like, oh, what is the evidence for you to think that this, for example, the dysfunctional thought or belief behind this is like, I cannot rely on my friends, I am all alone. And then they state this and be like, okay, let's look, what is the evidence for you to say this? If you just don't look into the moment at the moment, but maybe look into the last weeks that you interacted with your friends. And by that, it's like helping to explore the reality. So seeing that, okay, I just having a fight right now with my friend and I'm very angry with her, but she was there for me last time I broke up with my boyfriend. She was there for me when I had a fight with my mom or when I was studying, and she was bringing me, I don't know, a nice coffee when I was like super tired. And just by reflecting them, like you try to like ground them in reality. So we never say anything like, oh, this is bad or this is good. We also try to avoid the word dysfunctional. So we're just trying to be like, okay, you have this thought and your emotion, and it's allowed to have this. Like there's place for it, there's space for it, there's time for it. It's okay. No worries. Like we're not judging. We're just like trying to see, is there more about it? Is there things that we can explore?
Thank you so much. We could talk about this for hours. It's so interesting, but I want to let you also ask questions here or also online if you have some. There is one mic there that can come to you. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I would have a question, not from the engineering side, but from the patient side. I was wondering, with more and more people using artificial intelligence to write texts, to make research, to make inquiries, etc., I was wondering, on a mental health point of view, if it doesn't lead to people losing self-confidence in their own skills. Could you, I don't know if any one of you could respond to that.
Ooh, maybe it's more of a question for you as a psychologist, David.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I don't think I have the answer for this. I think there are so many different factors which can influence self-confidence. Being able to write, I think it's a factor too, to be able to write and to lose this ability to write your own text, or to see my text is worse than text generated by a computer, that could influence it. And I think for this, more important is that you have other things. If you use AI or language models to create text, and you see that you're worse than this AI, so it's important to have other tools to feel good, to improve the mental health, and maybe that's then the subject for you to help, like doing sports and things like this, to improve self-esteem, self-confidence.
Very interesting question. I was just actually thinking about myself. I was like, I first try to like write things, and then I ask AI, and then it's like I have more. It's like a toolbox. I have more answer. Let's don't forget also the quality of the question is important. So maybe that's the first thing as well. It's like tuning your question towards having really good answer. And that's I also mentioned this part of digital literacy and also critical thinking. So it's a combination. We are really getting into more and more complex world where the basic skills of critical thinking, which we should be teaching very early on, and then digital literacy are going to be very important. That's my comment. Thank you.
Writing good scripts, so yeah, making good scripts
again, right?
Very important when you talk to ChatGPT. Is there another question? Yes, thank you.
Hi. Oops. So you mentioned studying the ethical considerations behind integrating AI in your products. So how do you go about creating a ethics committee, for example? Is it something you do internally with the people you already have, or do you have to hire new people, or maybe this can be a consultancy thing? How do you go about it?
I will let everybody else answer. I will tell you from research perspective. You pass through so-called IRB, in institutional review board. I lost institutional review board. That's a very American style name, IRB, which is we fill up forms, you explain your protocol, you show evidence how it works, and then they give you a certificate, and only then you can start recruiting your individuals to studies. And then IRB, it's the US, it's Carnegie Mellon and Stanford. Okay, then in Denmark it was called differently, and then in Geneva it's called Commission Universitaire de Recherche. Oui, correct. And I'm also a member of it. I'm not evaluating my own protocols, of course. I'm evaluating other colleagues. So it's a peer review. There's forms to fill. There's tons of different things you have to explain. You have to attach all the questionnaires and elements of the software and previous past studies and evidence, any evidence you have. And then also they can always ask you for more, and also including even the flyers you're going to use when getting recruiting individuals, and everything surrounding and incidental findings. There is an element of incidental findings. If you find something which may indicate some elements of challenges, right, and some unusual things, so what do you do? And then in Denmark there was an element of criminal findings even, like in the forms, you have to have a plan for what happens if something is something. so it's very interesting process of getting through understanding what does it entail to do human subject studies in your context. And in my lab, everybody is required to do online program. I'm not advertising anything, but there's University of Neuchâtel, which has online program, which is recognized by Swiss Medic. It's an online program from basic of ethics and basic in general, not AI anything, but like in general, like why we even informed consent and confidentiality and everything you get through, and then you pass a quiz and you have a certificate, and only then you can you have a design space of what can go wrong and also like reflection tools for your own study. So, and then as I said, when you approach applying for university board, ethics board, and you have forms to fill and additional attachment and annexes, and they can come back with questions. And recently, last year, I have done a study on sexual health, and it took 9 months to pass, like a baby. So, and I got a lot of requests of additional certification and quality of life. It's also sexual health is part of social interactions elements by World Health Organization. So very valid study and results coming soon. So I would encourage you to look into this. The University of Neuchâtel 3, maybe you know, it's called 3, and it's ethics certification in different languages, and there's a basic one and more advanced, and there's Swiss-based one, so also related to laws and regulations in Switzerland at all. And then in US, for example, when you apply for IRB, I cannot even press the button and add myself to the protocol or anybody else who did not already pass. And the name is CT, so it's something with training. I don't remember the whole thing, but like it's you cannot even add anybody to the protocol and submit for evaluation if somebody did not have already in the system this past evaluation, this past courses. So it's I really want to do it for all the students. I really want to do that for all the students. Wish me luck. Thank you.
We wish you luck. I like the metaphor, doing a baby, but you need to be really ready and want it. It's very interesting.
Do you pass through any ethical boards or?
No, in private for an NGO, I don't think there are like this ethics commission if we implement AI products. But in psychology, it has after some experiments. At the moment, that's not I don't think it's mandatory, but in psychology, after some experiments which harmed participants, they now it's mandatory for each experiment to let it be pass this test. Yes, but I think in the private business area, it's not regulated. This is why it's important that yeah, and that's why I think the EU tries to have some regulations for the use of AI.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for your question. Yes, one more over there. And I think it's going to be our last question.
So, yeah, I was thinking that, so I totally agree, of course, to this problem of using a chatbot for something where actually, of course, one wants to have interaction with an actual human being. And so then I also think that maybe it could actually, for some people or for some specific problems, be useful and easier to talk not to a human being, but to a machine. So to take out this additional human factor, which can maybe be problematic for some people. Do you think this is the case? And do you have specific examples where you think that this could actually be very useful?
David, maybe Mardela.
Yeah, I like to answer. I think it's really there are many people who don't want to talk to people about their problems and social anxiety, being judged by people and things like this. So it's important to give them an opportunity. But if you're a provider of a service like this, you are responsible, and that's the big problem for me, at least for for our service. That's a big problem to be responsible while trying to give them this low barrier to get help. But I don't have a solution at the moment, but maybe someday we have they can chat with bot, but some people will watch of this and then they can intercept it, and I don't know, but then it will not be only a machine, it will be humans watching, so it's difficult.
I don't remember the study exactly, but I read something about this, and it's quite high actually, how people prefer sometimes to talk to a machine instead of talking to a person, especially if it gets a bit more embarrassing, like for men, for example. There are, okay, no, I don't know avoid this topic maybe, but yeah, there are, especially like in the sexual area, like there are a lot of topics that people don't want to talk with other people, and those they actually prefer to talk just like to chatbot. And also, for example, if you're living in a foreign country where you don't speak the language, also what I noticed in talking to people about those things is that it's sometimes quite difficult to get like help in where you live, like in the country, in the language that you feel comfortable about, like to speak about your problems with. And there was always like very often that people said like, well, I would prefer then just like to talk to some sort of like AI, or like have some interaction online, or I don't care if this is in person or not. I just want to like get some feedback on my thoughts, or I just want to get someone to talk about it, to like challenge and have like a dialogue about it. So yeah, so it is, I think it is a promising way, but still, I think it's a long way to go.
Katarzyna, do you want to add something?
You mentioned the sexual health, and I had the privilege to have individuals who really wanted to talk about their sex life with me, and I was documenting it, and they were wearing wearables, and they had also continuous glucose monitor while in sexual acts, and I could do some physiological data assessment, and very fascinating papers upcoming, and very qual, very little sample. Nevertheless, one person gave me this example, and that's why I'm smiling, like, yeah, that makes sense. There was a specific mobile app, I don't remember which one because I heard so many names, for tracking your sexual health activities. It was designated most likely designed for men, by men for men, about their different elements of their sexual acts. And one person explicitly told me that he's using it just to see if he's normal. Like, seriously. Like, because there is a comparison with population, which is other trackers. So maybe, yeah, I will not comment on this.
Interesting things coming soon. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And our roundtable is coming to an end. I want to thank the three of you, Katarzyna Wach, Marlia Wati, Igus Tibagus, and David Welton, for your passion and for your inputs. We live with our mind full of new perspective. Thank you so much. I also want to thank the EPFL-Well-Being team, especially Laureline Duvillard and Albertine Kolendowska, for the organization and for their invitation. And save the date, Les Jours Santé will take place here on the EPFL campus from the 30th of September to the 4th of October. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your questions. And we wish you a very nice evening. Thank you.